Good afternoon on the East Coast, and
Yeah,
welcome to the Practical Prayer Podcast pre-show on New Thought Media Network.
I'm so glad we're here. It
Me
seems like
too.
I mean, we were here last week, right? We didn't miss last week,
We didn't miss a week. We missed a
but
week a couple of weeks ago.
it feels like it's been 2 weeks because I think because my computer was in the clinic, the Geek Squad clinic.
So you
And
went a while without a computer?
yes, and it was, oh my goodness. You know what? I got sympathy texts from people. And I'm not talking about one. I got several. I know you're going through a bad time. You'll be okay. And da, 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 da. So I thought, okay, how do I live my life, right? How do I do this? And so I said, what do the millennials do? You know how that little thing said, what would Jesus do? I
hmm
said, what would the millennials do? Okay, they got phones. You
Yep.
got a phone. You
You
have
got a
an
phone.
iPad. Figure it out. You can do this, girl. You can do this.
Life does
So
not end because the laptop goes into the shop.
yeah, the desktop went.
Oh, it's a
So
desktop. Okay, yeah.
yeah. So I was going around for 4 days. Can you see this? Right.
hmm
Phone here, iPad over here. Trying to do my clubhouse. And how do I do this? What? Oh my God, how does this work? You know, my brain has got a real workout this week.
Oh yeah. Learning to do the stuff that you do all the time differently. It's it's different.
It's it's very different. It's very different, and I can appreciate that a little bit now more than before because you know how we talked about control freakness.
I do. I do
So
recall we talked about that on
yeah,
occasion.
quite a lot, and I thought I'd stop and say, all right, now, is this your control freakness being challenged? Okay, just calm down here now. You're going to be okay. Your computer is gone, but it will be back on Friday. You'll be okay. Right? So they called me Wednesday and told me I could come get it. But I knew I couldn't because of all the changes and numbers and stuff that I had to bring. Keep your appointment on Friday. That was rough. Oh, you have no idea. Or maybe you do.
No, I know. I know. The technology changes and upgrades. Sometimes it's so easy that you don't even notice. Like, wow, that was so simple. Like, I moved from an old iPhone to a new iPhone. You just point the camera at the new iPhone, at the little pattern on the old iPhone, and they do the Vulcan mind meld. And you don't even have to think about it. It's like having the old phone working on new hardware. And then there are other times where it's just excruciating because nothing works and nothing fits and nothing goes back where it's supposed to be. And there's two software upgrades in the middle of it. So everything is supposed to work differently, but you got to learn it all at once. So yeah, I hear you.
And
I
and
absolutely hear you.
they got Chat GPT. You know about that, right?
Oh yeah.
So I'm trying to have the right attitude about it because I'm a baby boomer, right? So I have to always guard against old foginess. And I think if baby boomers don't keep that in mind, they lose the battle. So I'm trying to think, okay, I understand what I'm doing. Chat GPT, is this threatening me in any way? So I kind of went through that whole thing. Then you got to learn it. And I'm like, do I really? You know what? This is another learning curve. So when I get finished complaining, it's like, ready, set, go.
hmm I
Yeah.
did a little experiment this week myself with ChatGPT. Actually, a couple of them, because somebody had recommended that it can be really helpful for evaluating your writing. So I took some stuff that was written on a website and I put it in ChatGPT, and I said, give me some suggestions for making this clearer and more effective as marketing copy. And it came back with some really good suggestions and a couple of things that were way off base. But it's input. And I
Mm-hmm.
was very much realizing that I am a human writer slash editor looking for input. And then I can use that input and either incorporate it or modify it or decline it.
Mm-hmm.
And then just for fun, because it's Easter, and I'm, doing the metaphysics of Easter as my talk. So I put the prompt into ChatGPT. Write a 5-minute sermon on the metaphysics of Easter. Please don't use any Bible quotes. And it came back, and the surprising part is how quickly it wrote the talk. And also surprising how bland and uninspiring it was. You know, all the key topics were in there, but it had no flavor whatsoever.
You know, this is a whole show by itself. The challenge, because it challenges me in a big way. I'm assuming that it challenges others in the same way, because I'm a word person.
Yeah.
And, you know, I love words and how to use them, and chat. Now, it's been great. A couple of times I thought, hey, this is wonderful. I don't know how you did this, but hey, you know, I needed a tagline. And I put some stuff in there. The perfect tagline came out. And I thought, in a million years, you would have never done this, right? You couldn't do it. So I was happy with that. The other side of it is that so I had to do an Easter thing without doing Easter, without saying Easter, without all the stuff. And I thought, okay, do it. And I needed to do it in 1 minute. And I took something that was a mile long, and I said, I'm not even giving this to Chat because I'm going to be really pissed. So I did it. And you know what? Here's the thing that hurt my feelings. We got a minute before we go on?
We can take as much time as we want.
Okay. So
I got to figure that we're entertaining.
Okay. So here's the part that, you know, was pretty upsetting, right? I have an advanced degree in homiletics, in the art of sermon design. And I think that was one of the things I was most extraordinarily proud of. Okay, so that requires words. And so was my thing. I can paint a picture on the canvas of your mind. And I could do that and make you love the 30 minutes that it takes. And I've never had a complaint about that. Now, when they say that this generation only has like a real, 3-minute thing, how am I going to take this great skill that I have? And so that's when I talked about being threatened. What am I going to do with me? It's like, got to get this thing down to a minute. You know what? I did it. I did it. And so I thought, well, that was then, this is now. No time to whine about it. Let's just go. No time
One of the things that I've noticed is that when you only have like 30 seconds worth to say, and you say it all in 30 seconds, it's different than when you have 2 hours worth to say and you say 30 seconds worth, because there's some oomph. There's some oomph behind it when you're just you're playing the greatest hits.
Yeah.
And just because the current generation doesn't like paying attention doesn't mean paying attention isn't a good idea.
Exactly. It's just trying to find the right balance, I suppose. You know, because when I look at who's listening, it's a pretty good age range. And I'm thinking, how do you do the balance of this? Because, first of all, I don't want to bore myself, number one, because that's worse. It just takes time, I suppose. But here's the thing, though. By the time you figure it out, it's on to the next thing. It's going to be some other software that's going to blow this last stuff away. That's how fast we're moving.
Now
like that
we're gonna start sounding like cranky old people any minute now.
I'm not doing that.
What I noticed that ChatGPT did with the talk is it said forgiveness is an important part of the metaphysics of Easter, and that was like the first sentence of the paragraph, and then the rest of the paragraph started with the same word, forgiveness or surrender or faith, and then just expanded on it. So this was like it was being written for an inattentive generation. So you can just read the first sentence of each paragraph and not have to read the whole thing. So, and I'm not sure if that was ChatGPT doing a good job or a bad job or just reiterating the bad job that has become so popular lately. Anyway, we're talking about nuggets today.
There were a few right there, right?
The wonderful thing about metaphysics is that you can find metaphysical meaning anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Anywhere. When I was in ministry school, we were sitting in I think I might have told you the story. We're sitting in a living room in a borrowed house down in Ocean City. And we were told, all right, you have 5 minutes. Find something in the room to do inspirational metaphysical talk about. Okay. And my fellow students are, oh my God, what am I going to do? And the person who owned the house was testing different paint colors. So there's this big splotch of brown paint in the middle of a white wall. That was what my talk was.
But you know what? Like I don't know if you just know this stuff or you have a knack for it. But being in the profession that you've been in, it's like just the perfect flow.
Yeah, that is one of my skills. That's one of the things that I am absolutely able to put the pieces together and tell a story about it.
Yes, you can, and that's one of the perks of having you as a teacher. I figure out now how do you do that. Okay, we're good. Let's go.
Yeah. A quick shout out to the folks who are watching and listening on YouTube and Facebook on New Thought Media Network. You are welcome to put a comment into the comments if you want. A few of you have done that so far. Also, at bethelight.com, there is a comment button, be-the-light.com, which is my website. And you can send a message through there with a question or a prayer request or a suggestion. Or stock tips, or whatever you think we would be able to benefit from, and we will include that in a future show. So this is the pre-show portion of the podcast. We're going to do the intro of the podcast and then record the episode, which will be out in podcast land in the next couple of weeks. And anything else we have to say before we start doing that thing, Carol?
I'm ready to go.
You're ready to go.
I'm excited about this week.
I found myself quoting you a couple of times this week.
Oh, really? That's interesting. Can we?
Well, but it's one of my favorite catchphrases of yours.
It's a lot.
That's a lot. That's a lot. There's some people who are dealing with a lot of stuff, and just to be able to stop and say, yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And then I credited you with it because it's valuable. It's a lot.
I'm impressed with me. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, don't hurt your arm patting yourself on the back as we start the podcast.
Hey.
A practical prayer is a prayer that works.
These discussions between Reverend Bill Marchiony and Carol Lawrence dive into the details of how it works and how to work it.
Reverend Bill is a New Thought minister and the author of Practical Prayer for Real Results.
Your new life begins with a new thought.
Carol Lawrence is on a spiritual quest, finding the New Thought teaching after decades on the pulpit in 3 different traditional denominations.
I've got some questions.
Together, they're exploring the philosophy and activities that come together from many of the world's religions to create the practical spirituality that is New Thought.
Welcome to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol Lawrence here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marchiony.
I love the idea that you had for the episode today.
Oh, seems like I had a few. So which one did you love?
Just the single word, nuggets. Okay. And that brought me back to when I was getting myself involved in the graphics and the printing industry. I went to a trade show, and it's like everything is brand new, and I learned so much, and it was amazing. And then I went the next year, and there were a lot of the same things that people were talking about, but there were still some valuable pieces that were in there. And after going to the same trade shows every year for 15 years, I got to the point where I was speaking and telling about some of the new things that you could do based on the old ideas that I had. And the people, it's the same old guys, same old women are up there pontificating, telling the same old story. And every once in a while there would be a nugget. And that would be what made it worth going that year. So it went from being just completely gold and a whole gold mine to there are nuggets in here and it's valuable to find them. So when you suggested today that we talk about nuggets, I knew exactly what you were talking about. Or maybe not.
Well, here's what I was talking about. Well, it's broad. So many experiences, like I mentioned change, and you can't sum it up in just one thing. So there's so many lessons to be learned. For example, I spend good gouts of time with my kids, always have. I love them, they're quite grown now, but through them, here's what it's made me think about. I thought that by a certain age, you got it, right? Like my age, not theirs. And you just like take the truth that you've learned and just kind of coast out with it. No, doesn't work like that.
Does not work like that.
These nuggets that I'm bumping into and learning, I'm like, wait a minute, you mean to tell me that there's no rest, quote, coast out time? Like I'm going to be learning, dealing with nuggets all the way to the end? This stuff can be tiring. So, okay,
Well,
so maybe
isn't that the lesson to learn, though? Is to not to wear yourself out doing the learning, but the coast out is to find that enjoyable groove. Because it's not like you need to figure everything out. You've got a lot of it under control and figured out already. And if you're getting 10 nuggets a day and it's exhausting, then maybe you can get yourself down to 7 or 8, or maybe 5, or maybe 3, or maybe 1 a week.
Exactly. But, you're talking to this recovering control freak here. So I'm, in my old life, I am prepared for every eventuality. Because
Yeah.
I'm a planner, right? And if a new one shows up, hey, give me a second. I'm going to work this out. Not excluding, the power of the universe and all of that. Not excluding that, but saying, listen, I got to move. I got to move. Now it's like, this keeps happening. Guess what? I'm giving up on this thing. Spirit, just let me know what you're doing. Because this is a lot. This is a lot. And change brings a lot, and I think, for me anyway, I am trying something new over the last couple of years and just relax and see where the change is taking me and work with that. But it just keeps happening, it just keeps happening.
And sometimes the change happens in several different directions all at the same time. And it's like, uh-oh, I'm right back into the vortex of having everything up in the air at once. I thought I outgrew this.
I thought I had this one down. But it comes to me in a new way. I just wanted to say something to Arthur Anthony. He's got a note in there, and I don't want you to feel ignored. We may or may not be able to talk about that, but I see it. And guess what? I did copy your link, and I will look at it, I promise, like right after the show. So you hang in there with us, and
Carol's
you're not
busy.
ignored.
Carol's busy.
Yeah.
And likely to be a nugget at the end of that story. Somebody was asking me yesterday about how you and I originally connected, and that is such an unlikely story. The only Facebook ad I ever ran, and the only time you ever clicked on a Facebook ad, and then I called you back immediately, and it was divinely ordained.
But you're leaving out the most important part. Now, you can't leave this part out. I said to Spirit, I gotta have a teacher with flesh on him. I've been hanging out with the Ascended Masters for years now. I love them. I keep meeting new ones, but I really need a teacher that I can talk to that can answer me back immediately, that I'm not going to have to sit in meditation for an hour. Not that that's bad, but I need a little bit of help here. And that's the day I went on Facebook. And that's when you came. See, it's important.
Okay. I did not do the preamble there. And by the way, you also have a teacher who you can argue with. Like when I say something that you don't like, you can object immediately. It's like, wait a second. I don't know about that.
Well, so this might take us another. I disagree with the Ascended Masters when we're talking, especially if we're not in a group. If it's one, I'll say, like James Allen, I'm doing with him right now. James, this is not going to fly. Okay? This is 2023. This is not going to fly. I understand what you're saying, but, and as I keep on reading, like he doesn't change his mind. He does not flex. So I flex, so it's depends on how you look at that exchange or conversation. With you, yeah, you answer pretty immediately. I don't push back as much with you.
Well, I'm so sensible.
I don't think so.
No.
I don't push back as much with you because you are from this time space that we're living in. And if you're saying something that I'm not clear about because you're like this new thought genius and I'm trying to get there, I'll figure, okay, let me just figure out what he already knows within this, like 2023 space right now. With James Allen, they're back there in the 1800s. Okay, truth is the truth and it translates, but you guys ain't quite getting it. I'll just try to bring it up myself. I don't know. It's a little bit different, but I needed somebody with skin on them. You're the one Spirit sent. You're it. So,
yep.
Right? I even said, you're kidding.
Right.
Okay?
Him? Oh my gosh.
Well, that goes, and we've already been through that, right? It was always a nice, you're kidding. So whenever you say something that I'm confused about or even disagree with, I always say, okay, Spirit, this is the one you sent, so let me try to figure out what he's saying. It doesn't mean that I don't come back and challenge you. Sometimes I do.
That's
and
true.
I think that's part of it too, right?
So in the unlikely event that we can loop this back to the topic that we chose for today of nuggets, are there any nuggets that you can bring to mind right now of things that have come up along the way that seemed initially either were like opaque or not visible and then suddenly wound up being sparkly bits of gold?
Oh, well, we did mention it. Being a control freak, I was, and I'm not saying I was proud of it. I felt that my position in my family, all of my life, had required that kind of personality. So I felt very comfortable and even happy that in this position that I'm in, I have that ability to do that. And so I never questioned it. I always try to be gracious and loving, and cautious, but control freak nonetheless.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a comfort zone, and actually I didn't get a whole lot of challenges in my whole life about any decisions that I made. That was it. And then here you come along and caused me to rethink it. And I think that might have been the biggest hurdle for me.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's letting go.
Yeah, and the interesting part is going back, because we have the entire library, the arc of our interactions, coming up on 100 episodes worth, that are all living out there in podcast land. And so somebody can start listening at episode 1 where you proudly proclaim your card-carrying control freak membership. And you probably didn't notice that much of me kind of saying, well, all right, if it's working for you, then go for it. Let's see what happens. Because I know what happens when somebody who has a history of liking to be in control gets really deep into becoming active in their metaphysical nature. Is like the control stuff has to go away.
Okay, so let's look at this word like, because that's an important word. So you said who likes being in control. And I never felt that I ever had a choice. I was born the firstborn, and that's a value, that's a position in our family, even in the extended family. You're the firstborn, you have certain responsibilities, you lead responsibly. And so in your downtime, you figure out what to do when the lights come back on, kind of thing. And so it's, and it's just how it was. And I was very proud to be able to do that in my corporate life and in every job. I just stepped into that. And it wasn't a like, it was who I was. And meeting you, you're saying there's another way. I'm like, he doesn't know what it's like, first of all.
When we're teaching people how to create their new experience, and basically we believe that what we're experiencing in our life is a result of what we believe. And some of them are beliefs that we are aware of and we know that we have them, and they're chosen beliefs. And others are hidden beliefs that we don't know where came from, or they're from so far back that that's just the way that it's always been. Mm-hmm. And I am sure that you know a fair number of firstborn children who should have been the leading, controlling, let me take care of this stuff, that just screw it up completely. They are completely unable to do that. They drop the ball so often that somebody else picks it up and becomes the one who is going to take care of stuff that needs to be taken care of. My suspicion is you were the firstborn, so they tried handing that baton to you, and you grabbed it and carried it.
That's right. Well,
you thought you had to, and you could, so you did.
Absolutely.
And that was the belief. That was the belief.
There was no question. It's just
except if you hadn't been able to, if you'd stumbled and dropped the baton often enough, your dad would have said, "Oh, okay, let's find somebody else who can carry this."
I can't even imagine my father saying that.
He wouldn't have said it. He would have just done it.
Whatever. I don't know.
The definition of insanity is to continue to hand the controls to somebody who keeps crashing the car. It's like, no, eventually let's get a different driver.
I think for the biggest learning for me with you in that regard was that there were others in my, like extended family, some other cousins that were firstborns, and all of us took our position there. But then when it came to us being together, we would always acquiesce to whoever was the oldest in the group at the time. So it was just the way of things worked. Never thought of it working any other way. But then now that you mention it, there was one who dropped it. But sadly,
yeah,
she
it's
was
always
shunned.
sad.
She was shunned. She was really shunned because she could not carry, the torch the way it is required in this family. Mm-hmm. And actually, she's several years older than I am. And about 4 or 5 years ago, we talked a little bit about that. A little tiny bit, because I wanted to apologize to her for how she had been treated, just being who she was. And it did a lot of damage to her, really. Mm-hmm. It really, really did. So much so that I didn't know what to do with that. I felt badly if I had been any part of it, but I didn't know how to fix it. Still don't, actually, because, you come faith. And I do want to say this, too. It's not taking God's place. It's not that I didn't leave room for God. It was, our family was so God family, so much so that you think in your quiet time, you're getting input from God and you just carry it out. So it just becomes a natural way of functioning until you meet Bill Marchiony and New Thought. And here it is, the word, let go. I'm going to need therapy for this, right? That's what I thought.
It happened. Let's take a break.
Yeah.
And when we continue the conversation about nuggets, perhaps we'll talk about what we do when we learn that things are different than we thought they were.
Learn to put practical prayer to work in your life. The steps are simple to learn and let you begin to get real results to create the life of your dreams immediately. Reverend Bill Marchiony's widely acclaimed book, Practical Prayer for Real Results, gives you a clear summary of the New Thought principles behind practical prayer and the series of easy-to-understand steps found in the most effective prayers from religions and spiritual practices all over the world and throughout history. Practical prayer is not a replacement for your religion or practice. It's a technique to make the work you do in consciousness even more effective. The book includes 40 prayers on various topics that you can adapt as needed and use as your own. Practical Prayer for Real Results is available in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook on Amazon or at b-the-light.com. That's b-the-light.com.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol Lawrence, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marchiony. We're going to
talk some more about nuggets and specifically about what happens when we find out that something we thought was going on is actually different than what we thought. And every once in a while that happens. Like when, as Carol was discussing, the pattern in the family is that the firstborn always takes charge and is the one who's in control and has everything organized, and it turns out there is a slightly older cousin who was not suited to that role, and it didn't work well because there was the belief that everybody in this family does that, and when she couldn't do that, then it sounds like he treated her like she wasn't in the family.
I didn't, but others did.
Yeah, that's, when somebody is shunned, it's like, well, you don't belong here. And it's really sad when that happens. And then the whole group has the opportunity, not that the whole group always does this, the whole group has the opportunity to take a look at what made them think that that was the way things were going to be, because maybe things are different than the way that they had been supposing. And the word that we use for that is assumption. Mm-hmm. We make the assumption that things are going to be a particular way or going to go in a particular pattern. And then when it turns out that we made a mistaken assumption, then we have no idea how far we have to backtrack. Where did that start? And do I have to dig it? Do I have to dig that all the way up to the back to the source, or can I just cut the root where it is now and leave the old piece in place? We don't know. We don't know.
I'm really big on meditation, and it comes in different forms. So for me, just to be quick, to me it's just to shut down, stop thinking my own opinions, and just be as blank as possible, and ask Spirit to please help me clarify, help me understand this. Now, to me, it's that simple. I know to others there's more pieces to to it than that, but I'm just so absolutely clear and confident that Spirit speaks when we slow down and we're quiet. And in the case that we just mentioned, my heart went out to my older cousin, but then there was a time when I felt like I was falling off the wagon and not, presenting properly. And so I went to another older cousin and I wanted to talk about it, and she would not hear it. She said, I don't hear this. You know what your call is in life. Get your ASS up, get it in order. And, so the conversation was like that. And I walked away thinking, okay, so she's correct. So I got back in marching order. Now, to some that might seem wrong, but it was helpful. It really was, because we're not going to take time for you to feel sorry and indulge in this. You know what's correct. Now go do it. So, but I think that probably doesn't work for everybody. And I went away with a spirit of gratitude and to me, complete humility, understanding that I can fall short, but that doesn't change what I am responsible for, that is myself and my own decisions. So keep it moving, because there are people that need to see that, and that's part of the control thing. It's not always about the person, but it's about others that, in a former life I called that I serve. I am responsible to help you and present to you the way God works. And so I have to allow God to work so that you can see it. But yeah, you don't have to dig too far for that. I mean, you can if you have time, but sometimes we don't have time. Everything is moving. So sit down, see what God says, and get up and keep it moving, because people need that. They need that.
And that response of, pick yourself up by the bootstraps and just continue on doing this the way that we do this, because you can and you have, and the people around you need you to continue, so just do it. Get over yourself. That can work really well, and it can also work really badly. If somebody is completely burned out and under-resourced and they don't have it left to do that, and somebody gives them that pep talk, oh, just do it. It's like, it's unhelpful, and it alienates the relationship. So there's also I was going to say need, it's not a need. There's the importance or the opportunity of being sensitive to the situation, because the answer isn't necessarily always the same. The answer might be different for different people. It might be different for the same people on a different day. Like, if you have it today, then you do it. And if you don't have it today, then pretending like you have it isn't going to help.
I see what you mean, but here we go. We have to go back to the source of our belief and find our direction there. Now, it may not be your source of your belief may not be in what you learned in Sunday school. It might be a little further back than that.
Oh yeah. Well, in the case of your family, this is something that your family has believed for a long time.
For a long time. However, they are, quote, they would say God people. So the idea is that you open yourself up to Spirit or God, and God will show you what to do, right? Psalm 37 says that the steps of a good person are ordered by the Lord. And so you stay in touch with God, and you will get your next step, and you do it, and your hurt feelings will be taken care of. You'll have your moment, but it's about trust, so it's what you believe in and in how God acts in your life. So I always believe that I am never outside of God's presence or, comfort zone, whatever you call it. So if I take the next step, I usually do it and say, I've even said, this is so funny, God, you see what I just did? Okay, now listen, I think that that's what you told me, but I hope you got this because I took this step. Now that's happened more than once, but it has to do with what I believe about God. And I think that's where I try to take people back to what you believe about God helps you take the next step.
Mm-hmm.
So with New
the
Thought,
the huge piece in there is about surrender. It's about letting go. Because when we get into an ego battle, because this is the way that I've always done it, and then there's pain or difficulty or challenge that's come along, and we take that to meditation, if the answer is do it differently, then, and we get into an argument where our ego says, well, I can't do it differently because my family's always done it this way, and I was always brought up to believe this or that or whatever, and you then run into that internal conflict. Something's got to give. Something gets to change. And as you have noticed throughout your illustrious career, you got to do what God says to do. Because if you don't, it just doesn't work at all.
No, it doesn't. And so people say, well, how do I know? How do I know that it's God? Look back at how God has worked in your life in the past. I don't think God plays tricks. If God has, let's just take a simple example. If God speaks to you through music and that has been, that's your most sensitive, open spiritual place, then I would think that you might want to be in meditation with, music if that calms you and so forth. Being in trouble is not the place in midstream to be changing. It's just not. So, in the toughest places, even with the pressure from family, I know God will tell me the next. Now, I have had times when I've said to God, look, this is not what we discussed. This is not it. And so I'm not moving until you, God, get back on track with what we were talking about. And then I laugh and sit there. Now, it's important not to get up after you say that. You got to stay, right? You got to stay. After you've gotten all that out of the way, then sit. And the next thing is to trust and receive. And if you don't get it within your time of meditation, just get up and walk. Just go on with life. It's going to come. It's going to come.
Yep.
So you will always know.
Yeah, and there's a lot of times, somebody will get an idea, and this happens a lot to we recovering control freaks. We can recognize that it's happened, because I spent a whole long time in that same exact category where I could figure
I
stuff
don't
out.
know that you ever told me you were really a control freak. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, perfectionist control freak. Yeah, and so it is possible to have our minds come up with a great idea and convince us that it's a spectacularly good idea. And it's possible for our ego mind to do that while we're sitting there trying to meditate. So here's this quiet place, and I used to do voices on the radio, and sometimes that ego voice does a really good impression of the still small voice, and it's trying to convince me that this is spirit speaking to me, when it's my ego trying to pretend like this is God ordained. And the paradoxical thing that I found is really helpful is resistance. When I get a great idea for something that I can do, something new and wonderful that comes up in a meditation, if I go out and do it and it was my ego, then there's, it's like a sitcom ready to happen. And if I just resist, say, well, maybe that is a good idea, or maybe not. Let me just sit on that for a little while. If it's my ego, it tends to come back with an embellishment or a different idea. It's going to keep trying stuff until it can convince me that we're in charge, and let's go ahead and roll this thing down the hill. And if it's truly God speaking to me, God calls back. Same message one more time, and again and again and again. Letting it go through a voicemail, trying not to answer the call, does not work. When Spirit wants you to do something and you're open to doing what Spirit wants to do, the message comes through loud and clear and repeatedly. You need to listen for it, but it doesn't have to be subtle.
You know what? That's a lot. That's a lot, because that's a lot of thinking, right? I'm a little bit more simplistic, probably because I don't know as much. So
you have established over many years a technique. So you just know intuitively and within yourself when it's Spirit speaking.
Yeah, because I've tried to learn. I listened to you about the ego, and I've tried to learn that. I've tried to see what is ego, is it speaking, and it confuses me terribly. So for me, if something comes to me, I'm thinking, I wake up in the morning before I get up at 5 a.m., between 4:45 and 5. And by the time my foot hits the floor, I got a whole bunch of ideas. On yesterday, something new to do with this one, and I just shut it all down. And when I get to my meditation spot, I just say, listen, now maybe this is ego, I don't know. But I get up, and when I'm done, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to look for signs and messages to support what I'm thinking. I'm really not doing a whole heck of a lot right now, because I don't know how this is going to work out. So, for example, I have a lot on my plate over the last several months, stressed out stuff, and I didn't know what to do. And I was trying to make decisions, and nothing seemed right. I got an envelope in the mail that had some money in it, designated for one of the things on the chopping block on my list. I was ready to chop it. And this check came in, and paid for it and took me so far over what I was concerned about. That's how it works for me. I mean, it's not that I don't have to think it, I do, but I just know that spirit is going to respond when I'm chilling, when I'm quiet, and if I'm patient. And that check had been in the mail for about maybe several days.
Mm-hmm.
And I just looked and I said, you know what? I don't have to think about this anymore. I had to catch a tear, right? Because I was so frustrated about this particular thing. I didn't have to think anymore. Spirit worked it out through somebody else. And said,
Yeah, you're ready to
"This-
give up? Spirit says, not yet.
Not yet. So,
Not yet.
man, chop
can't-
something else, but not
You're not putting that
this.
down yet.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's take another break and then do a practical prayer on releasing and opening and accepting. And it's going to have to do with fists.
Yeah.
Are you ready to get results? Now, that's not a rhetorical question. Are you ready to get results? RUR2GR. That's actually the abbreviation for the steps in a practical prayer. Recognition, unification, realization, gratitude, and release, with a couple of extra steps in there in case some doubt creeps in along the way. RUR2GR. This class is about the prayer technique that's common to all of the spiritual practices and religions in the most effective prayers that they have. And by effective, I mean that the prayer works. It actually creates a change in the experience of the person doing the prayer. It gets a result. We're going to begin with theory, and then we're going to take it into practice. By the end of the class, you will have your very own practical prayer that will help create transformation in your life.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marchiony.
And we're going to pray. We're going to do a practical prayer. And this is about guidance and allowing Spirit to inform us as to what our next steps are. So we've been talking about that during the podcast episode today. And this is part of the very specific technique that we can use to do that when we're in a meditation or a prayer. So let's do that. Start by turning away from the world around you. There's stuff, there's ideas, there's thoughts and notions and plans that we all have. And they're very valuable, and they are a lot of the ways that we organize and operate our lives, according to these great ideas that we've had and understanding of how all the pieces are fitting together and how the world works and how other people are going to be supporting and engaging and opposing and interacting with us. And maybe that's all true, and maybe there's something bigger. So as we turn our attention away from the specifics and the details in the world around us, we can open ourselves up to the divine presence, that God essence, that is everything, that is everywhere, that is everyone, that one creative force that has shared itself as all of its creation. Everything, everywhere, everyone is God's divine presence expressed in a unique and specific way. That infinite intelligence that knows everything, that has created everything, that has created each of us, is the same intelligence with which we're thinking. All of the knowledge, all of the insight, all of the wisdom anywhere is available everywhere, and that means it's available to each of us at the exact perfect moment. And in order to be filled with that next new idea, the first thing we get to do is let go of the old ideas. When we're breathing, we can take in a big deep breath, but we can't take in another big deep breath until we breathe out the first one. There is a process, there is an unfolding. And by releasing whatever has led us to this point, whatever we thought we knew, whatever we thought was important, as we open to that next new possibility, we surrender the thought that we already have it figured out. We can open ourselves to something brand new. We can allow that newness to fill us up. The metaphor is the fist. If you clench your fist, it feels powerful. You can throw a punch. You can hold on to something. You can grasp firmly. And by releasing, by opening our hands, we have the ability to receive something new and different. There's still the possibility of clenching our fists again. There's still the possibility and the opportunity to grab something, or to lift something, or to hold something, or to embrace something, or to throw wide our arms and allow some wonderful new experience to happen to us. That infinite creative power that creates everything is ready to give us that next wonderful, joyous, happy, prosperous, healthy, vital, loving, comfortable, creative, spiritual experience. And as we let go of our insistence about how it's going to work, we open ourselves up to wonderful new possibilities. And that infinite creative power that creates everything creates this next newness for us, through us, as us, each individually and all together. That is how newness flows into the world. As we let go of whatever led to this moment and embrace that brand new possibility, to allow ourselves to be guided by that still small voice, to allow ourselves to take steps in directions that we might not have considered previously, to allow ourselves to move ever higher on our own evolutionary path. That's how love unfolds. I'm so grateful for it. I'm grateful for the good that's showing up for and through and as each of us. And I'm grateful to be able to release this word into that creative law. And to know without any question whatsoever that the law is already responding. It's already saying, yes, this good is already underway. That wisdom and insight and uplift and guidance and newness and freshness is happening now. And so I let it be. And so it is.
The Practical Prayer Podcast with Reverend Bill Marchiony and Carol Lawrence is a production of BeTheLight.com.
be-the-light.com.
Where you can find more information about practical prayer for real results.
Our theme is by Music of Wisdom. You can learn about the spiritual community of New Thought Philadelphia with daily guided meditations,
Weekly celebrations of spirit,
and Reverend Bill's classes in practical spirituality
at newthoughtphilly.org.
That was a lot.
That was a lot.
I think it was good.
Yeah, it was wonderful. I love that metaphor of like not being able to take another breath until you've let go of the previous breath. Mm-hmm. You know, and when you ask people, it's breathing in or breathing out more important, then you can actually get people to have an argument about that.
Yeah, I could see that.
Okay. And it's comical that you can do that because, you know, you can't have one without the other. And it's not like one is more important than the other. You know, we don't breathe on average. We breathe in, we breathe out, we breathe in, we breathe out. Right. On average, we're not doing anything, but the breathing is actually really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. So, did we, let me see. We circled around. I don't know if we ever got back to the nuggets.
To the nuggets? We uncovered some nuggets and we discussed the nuggets. I'm not sure that we exhausted the topic of nuggets, but then again...
we could consider the whole thing a nugget.
Oh.
Yeah.
This is, actually, this is episode 99 that we're recording today. Yeah. So next week is episode 100. So... Okay. And, it's 100 episodes full of nuggets, as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. It's just so much. And you want to just give it all and can't in one episode or, really in one lifetime.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, we're not going to overflow the internet, so we can keep going.
Yeah. My son is moving in an interesting spiritual direction. And it is, and I can see where he's going. I can see where it's going to not end, but, the direction that it's going. And there's certain things that he has to address before he gets there. But he doesn't see that yet. And I'm thinking, like, there's so much to say, but even in a lifetime, you can't exhaust it. You just can't. So it's easier. I think you used the term let go. Did you just let go and just see what Spirit says to do next? If you try to do it all as a whole, I think you just exhaust yourself, and just burnout is like an understatement, because you can't do that. You just have to take one step and just believe that, and God will give you the next step if you're on this path. If this is the path that is for you, you'll see the next step. Scripture says, "Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my pathway." So you're only going to see one step at a time.
Right. The modern day metaphor is that you can drive coast to coast in the dark with headlights that only reach 200 feet in ahead of you.
Yeah.
So
and that's scary, but
you see where you're going, and you go a little bit, and you see some more, and you see some more, and you see some more. We don't need to have it all figured out before we get there.
Exactly.
And certainly before we start. All right, we're coming up to the top of the hour. I don't know what happens if we cross the streams on New Thought Media Network, but I'm not going to risk it. This has been the post show for the Practical Prayer Podcast. Thank you all for watching and listening, and we're looking at the comments, and send us a thing on BeTheLight.com. See ya.
Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, for your continued support. Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown Atlanta, for your monthly contribution. Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, for your monthly contribution. And please help us welcome Om Center for Spiritual Living in La Mesa, California. Thank you for your monthly donation. Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, for your most generous donation. And a special thanks to Hefferlin Foundation for your generous technology grant. And Suze Ajit, thank you for your very generous donation. And a super special thank you to Dr. Tracy Brown, RSCP. Thanks for being a super donor. And a big shout out to all our committed donors.